Okay, now in this tutorial we're going to be setting up our hunger and our thirst. So the way that we're going to set it up is we're going to have it just so it starts at 100 and it will slowly decrement over time. So let's say every 3 seconds you lose, I don't know, zero point 0.1 hunger or 0.3 whatever. You'll see. So what we can go ahead and do, head to content browser, right underneath add new, click show or hide the source panel. We want to show it. Then we go to C++ classes, open our folder name. Here's where we're going to create, well, we're going to actually create this in a separate component instead of doing this in our character. So let's right click, use C++ class, go to actor component, next, and let's give it a name, player stats. That seems fitting. Or player stat component. And we could probably pick a better name. Yeah, that'll work. So then press create class. You can't tell, I'm just kind of making this on the fly. So figured whenever I come across issues, you'll see how I kind of go through and try to troubleshoot them. Alrighty, so it is built. I'm just going to go ahead and build the project in Visual Studio. This is the first time I'm doing it, just so it should be a little bit quicker next time. So Control-Shift-B is the hotkeys that you would use to quickly build it. So first thing, I want to get rid of the tick function. We do not need that. I can highlight it. So remove that out of your header and in your CPP. Just remove the function altogether and remove the tick component line. Get rid of the extra comments. Alrighty. And we should be good to go. Now, one thing, since we are going to be replicating variables inside of this component, we need to set this component to replicate. Now, I used to be able to do this in the constructor, but I started having issues and I'm not entirely sure why. So I'm going to be on the safe side. I'm going to do this in begin play. First thing that we actually need to do, we need to include the Unreal Network header so we can actually do those things. So we're going to do hashtag include net Unreal Network. And then in begin play, just type in replicates. Should see, there it is. That is replicated. And you can see the parameter takes b, well, boolean, and should replicate. We want it to, so we're going to pass in true. So this component is now replicated. So anytime we replicate a variable or something inside of the header, it will, well, replicate. Duh. So anything else we can change? Nope. Alright, so let's organize this to make it a little bit neater. So I like to keep my functions and variables in a separate section. So I want to leave my functions, I'm going to create them underneath begin play. I'm going to have my variables above that in a separate protected section. So we know we need to replicate a variable for hunger and thirst. So in order to do that, we do u property and just set replicated as its parameter or tag, whatever these are called in this case. We're going to do float hunger. Then we're going to do the exact same thing for thirst and leave it. I'm going to go ahead and comment out the replicated lines just until I implement the well, the actual function that we will put in the CPP file to set to replicate, so that way I can build it without having a compile error. So let's just head over to the CPP file in the constructor and give them our default values. So hunger equals 100 and thirst equals 100. So they're set up like so. And then under the protected section, we're going to create a function that's going to kind of handle it. So basically the idea that, well, how I'm going to do it is on begin play, since this component's only going to run when our character is actually created, I want to start a timer right when that character is created. And every X amount of seconds, that timer is going to call a function, and that function is going to handle lowering our health, not our health, sorry, our hunger and our thirst. So that's going to be controlled by a single timer, and that'll pretty much be our baseline that we can work from there. So we're always going to have our hunger and thirst being lowered continually. So let's go ahead and just create a function. Void, don't need to return anything. A good name. I guess just handle nutrition, handle hunger and thirst. And that'll work because I don't plan on having anything else related to hunger and thirst. Yeah, that'll be fine. Alright, now we need to include the timer header. So hashtag include. Literally just search for timer, and it'll be timer manager. Now let's create a definition for this. So right click, quick actions, and renaming, or refactoring. Create definition. And we're good. Now let's go ahead and create a timer. Actually, one thing I want to do first, since we're probably going to be, there's a chance we might, I doubt we're going to actually do it. So we're going to do get world, then we can do get timer. Yeah, what now? Need to include engine.h, so include engine.h. Now we can do get world, get timer manager dot set timer, and here you can see the list of parameters, different overloaded variants that it has. So one thing we're going to want to make is a timer handle, so that way we always have, with that timer handle, it'll allow us to always access the specific timer through that handle. So that will be, we'll do that in our variables. So f timer handle. I don't know why it's all the way over this way. I'm just going to call it, we're probably only going to have one timer inside of here. So we're just going to call it timer handle. So in here, we're going to do timer handle. Then it's going to be referring to pretty much the area that it's in. So we're going to do this. Then it's the function that is going to be called, which is our handle hunger and thirst. So it'll be u player stat component colon handle hunger and thirst. Now it will be how, like, the rate that we want it to run. So for now, I'm just going to leave it at 3 seconds. So 3. And then it's true or false if we want it to loop or not, or just run once. So I want this to continue running, so I'm going to do true. And finish it off here. Now the use of having a timer handle is we can do things like this. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. So if we do dot pause timer, all we have to do is pass in timer handle. And this timer right here is now paused. Then later on, if we wanted to unpause it, we'll just do unpause timer and pass in that handle again, and it'll continue the timer so it keeps playing. So it's very handy, and no matter what, you should always create one. So I don't even know if there's a variant of this that would allow you to not pass in a handle, but who knows. Alright, so in handle hunger and thirst. So pretty much what I want this to do is I want it to check and see if we have authority right here. If we do not have authority, then I want it to call a function to run on the server. And that function is going to pretty much handle everything else. Such as, so it's pretty much going to call itself. And if it does have authority, then it's going to, wait, no. We could make that a little bit better. So in here, I'm just going to call our lower hunger and lower thirst. Inside the lower hunger and lower thirst, there I'm going to do the authority checks. So that way we can call lower hunger or lower thirst from anywhere else, and it'll automatically do the authority checking for us instead. That should make that a little bit better. So under public, let's do void lower hunger and void lower thirst. Actually, let's make them take into parameters. So float value. So value is going to be how much we lower it by. Value. Let's go ahead and create a definition. There it goes. So we have one for our hunger. Just copy and paste. Dang it. Copy and paste it. And we're going to do our thirst. So these functions are going to be pretty much the same. It's literally just going to be altering either the hunger variable or the thirst variable. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick build, make sure I didn't screw anything up that I overlooked. I always just do this regularly. Alright, we're good to go. So here, since we are not a pawn slash character slash whatever, we're in a component, we cannot do the simple if roll, as you can, roll, as you can see it'll highlight red, doesn't know what it is. What we need to do is get owner, well, typoed, but yeah, get owner roll, and we want to check if that has the authority. So if the owner roll, and we're going to do it less than authorities. If the owner roll is less than roll authority, we're going to call a server function that will in turn recall this function and set our hunger variable. And since our hunger variable is going to be replicated and only changed on the server will have complete authority, which if you watched my video on what I did for replicating health, you would understand. You should hopefully understand that. So then we're going to do else, everything else we're doing. Alrighty. So if in the else block here, it means we will have authority. So here we can do hunger minus equals value if we wanted to. So let's go ahead and just copy this, paste it down here, and change this to thirst. I want to actually do a little check here. So if hunger minus value is less than 0, just set hunger equals, actually I'm going to change this up a little bit. We could use this as a way to control our health as well. So as, let's say your hunger gets to 0, and then it gets to, well, let's say it goes to -1. We could kind of change that up a little bit, so based off of how far down, like how far below 0 your hunger or thirst is, that's going to be how far and like how much it decrements your health until you eat or drink and bring it back up. So if your hunger is at -5, then your health is going to go down by 5 every 3 seconds or so, unless we want to change this up a little bit and make it a little slower. So yeah, that seems like a pretty good idea to start from, so let's just do that. Alrighty. Now we need to create our server functions. Actually, let's call them here. Lower hunger, lower thirst. And we're going to create 2 variables called, so let's do it right below one. Float hunger decrement value. Then float thirst decrement value. And let's set these in our constructor. All right, let's set these to, I want it to decrease by 0.3 for now. And thirst to be a little bit faster at 0.5. That'll be good. So hunger is hunger decrement value, and thirst is thirst decrement value. Let's actually change these as just allow these to be edited anywhere. So we're going to do property, edit anywhere, category equals. So I want to give this a survival. Actually, for survival, let's just do survival, then the straight line, then player stats. And I'll show you how what edit anywhere does here in a second. Let's go ahead and build. And because I know I'm going to forget this, let's go ahead and add this component to our character. So we can load up the survival character CPP and .h. And in the, where do I want to put it? Oh. Let's just make our own little section here. Protected. And we're going to forward declare it so we don't have to include it in our header. So we're going to do class view, since it's a component, player stat component, make it a pointer. Let's just call it player stat comp. Now in our CPP, I'm going to create a little new section for our own includes. So we're going to include player stat component. And here we're going to create it in our constructor for our character. So player stat comp equals create default subobject, then the name of the component. So u player stat component, give it a name, player stat component. And now if we go through our player stat comp variable, we will have access to everything that we're doing. So if we wanted to, for example, lower hunger, we could access it, pass in a variable. So this is kind of the idea. So we can go through the character pretty much kind of that way, if need be. Alrighty, so we have the component created on our character, Control-Shift-B to build. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how the edit anywhere, like what its uses would be for. So if we go over here to our third-person CPP file, go to Blueprints, and open up the character, go to Open Full Blueprint Editor, and find our player stat component. There are no variables here. What did I forget? Unless they would show up here. I feel like I overlooked something. Oh well, we'll come back to that later. But pretty much that will kind of allow us to be able to try to change things on the fly. Meaning, so if we look at these variables here, so crouched eye height, how you can simply change that little slider up, well, change this amount up or down, however we want to whatever value. That's pretty much what it's going to be set up to do. Alright, so we are pretty much good to go. We just need to replicate our thirst and create our server functions to call back to our lower health and lower thirst. So first off, let's go ahead and replicate the variables. Now, one way I'm going to link this page as well in the description. If you type in Unreal Engine, replicate variables, come up to this page up here. That is not the page. See if it's this one. That actually shows like a good example. Here. So instead of typing all this out, because I quite frankly can never remember it, it's best just to go ahead and copy it and paste it into our project. So go to our CPP component of our component, and I do mine right below begin play. Change out your character for our component, and change out the last variable to hunger. Then we're going to copy this again, paste it, and we're going to do thirst. Then we can uncomment the replicated properties, and our variables hunger and thirst should now be replicated. So let's go ahead and build, make sure we're all good. You can ignore this red squiggly line. Take your time. Alright, there we go. So now we can go over here and create our server functions. And yeah, even though you have this here, still compiled. Alright, so right here. Here's where we're going to create our server functions. So it's essentially the kind of the same kind of deal as we did with the uProperties, but instead of uProperty, since it's a function, we do uFunction. And here we define how we want it to run it. So like I said, we wanted this to run on the server, so we're going to give it the tag server. We want it to be reliable, so it pretty much runs right away. We're good to go. Well, replicates right away, runs, yeah, you know what I mean. Unreliable kind of puts off its priority, whereas reliable makes it literally a priority. So then we're going to do with validation, and we're going to give it a name. So let's call this one void. I'm going to go ahead and prefix it with server. So let's call it server lower hunger, and pass in the amount, so float value. Now if we need two other functions in here, full server lower hunger validate float value. Then one more, void server lower hunger implementation float value. We are now good to go. Now we can go ahead and copy this whole thing and paste it one more time and change the word hunger to thirst. Then copy it and replace all the words hunger with thirst. And we now have our server functions for our thirst. So the only things that we need to create definitions for are the validate and implementation functions. So just like so. Then do the exact same thing again for the implementation. And we are good to go. Go ahead and copy these. I'm going to move them down below. And I want to copy them again actually. And change out hunger again for thirst. Whoops. Okay. So these functions here are only going to get called, hopefully, from the server. But just to do like a triple check, I'm going to do if get owner role equals role authority. Then we're going to call lower hunger and pass in value. Do the exact same thing for thirst. So lower thirst and pass in value. So then we want to call those functions here. So if our role does less than the authority, meaning we are the client and not the server, we're going to call lower server lower hunger, and pass in value, and do the same thing on thirst. Server lower hunger, lower thirst, and pass in value. Now let's go ahead and build it. I really need to go to sleep. Alright, built just fine. Now, as of right now, we don't have a way to really see what these values are. So what we can do is create just like we did with the health, we're going to create a little widget to use. So I'm just going to place mine in the directory, right click, user interface, widget blueprint. Oh, derp. Temp HUD, good enough. Open it up. Add some text just to the left middle of the screen. Make it a little bit bigger. Let's go to 28 size. And what we can do is over here beside text, we're going to bind this to a function. So we're going to create that function on our character. So one way to access it is simply type in get player, go ahead and get player character, and we're going to cast it. We're going to cast this one to survival character. Make this branch down here so that's running. Also, if you want to do like this, what I just did with this little thing, you can double click on it and it will create that little, whatever you call this little dot thing, that kind of makes it a little bit neater for the nodes. Alright, so once we have this casted, we're going to call the function that we're making here in C++. So go to survival character.h, and since this is just going to be a temporary function, we're going to do it in here, below our player stat component variable. So we're going to do u function blueprint here, then the function name and its return value. So I want to have it return an f string and call it get player or return player stats. Just place this at the very bottom out of everything. Sway f string a survival character return player stats, and here's where we're going to set it up. So let's go ahead and create two functions in our component to get our hunger and get our thirst. So float get hunger, float get thirst. At the bottom here, float u player stat component get hunger, return hunger, and copy and paste. Get thirst and return thirst. So now all we have to do from here is just call it. So we're going to create an f string. So f string return string. We're going to set that equal to hunger. Then player stat component get hunger. Oops. Then plus, alright, gotta convert that to a string. So one way to do this is f string sanitize float. That is not what I wanted it to do. So f string sanitize float, and pass in our get hunger function as a variable, or as the parameter. Then we're gonna do the same thing, plus thirst. Then do the same thing, f string sanitize float, player stat component get thirst. We're going to return the return string we just created. Let's go ahead and build this. What this is simply doing, we're going to be calling it from our blueprint here, and it's going to be continually called like it's in a loop. It's going to call this function. What this function's doing is it's going to be returning a string. It's going to be returning the word hunger, then it's going to add the hunger value, to it. And since we're returning a float with get hunger, we're going to be converting that float into an f string. And the exact same thing is going to be done with thirst. So now, as survival character, we can drag off and call return player stats. Here, we're going to add the return value to the return node. And if the cast was successful, we're going to execute that. So compile and save. And let's hope we actually can see it. And I forgot to add it to the character. Go to your third person CPP, blueprints, third person character, event graph. We're going to do this a crappy way. Drag off from begin play, so when the character is created, search for create widget. Create widget. Then the class is going to be our temporary HUD that we just created. Then return value, we're going to add to viewport. I keep pressing tab out of habit. Add to viewport. So this will add it to our screen. So compile and save. Now it should appear. Yep, so there's our hunger and there's our thirst. And as you can see, it's decrementing by whatever we set it to. So now we can actually see if this is working multiplayer-wise. Let's just run a dedicated server. Maybe we can just do one. It'll be the exact same. 100. Oops. Not sure exactly why it did that. But as you can see, it's decrementing down just fine, and we are in fact the client. Yeah, I know. You'll have this issue with the way we have the widget set up, but you can really just ignore this for now. Like I said, it's only temporary. Let's add this to 2 players, and new editor window, just make it a little neater. Really wonder why it does that. Unless they're in their own separate instances. Both? Yeah? Like I said, doing this on the fly. Let's see something here. If we don't have our hunger, or our lower hunger and lower thirst functions, let's see if it still does it. Same setup. Alright, it's been 3 seconds and it has not done it. So that means it's something somewhere. So let's start out. Yeah, let's just comment out lower thirst, and we'll start one at a time. Alrighty. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. And it did it. Okay. So it's calling our lower hunger function, and here's where we're kind of having some issues. Get rid of this guy. So just to make sure, let's go ahead and comment out where it calls the server function. And try again. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. That's actually kind of strange behavior. That should not be running because we're not the authority unless this is another one of those editor multiplayer bugs. So what we can do to actually really test this is we can host our own dedicated and join with our client. And I showed a tutorial video on how to do this as well, so you can just do the exact same thing. I'm just going to change this to survival. Pretty sure that's what the project is. Yeah, survival. And survival. And host dedicated server. And join with client. Now, if everything's working right, we should be fine. Alright, that's lowering. And I completely forgot to save. Alright, so let's uncomment that out and build. And host the server and join. Let's see if it still does it. Which it looks like it did, so let's try to join with another client. Join again. We should be in the same lobby. If we don't see him, we know there was an issue. Alright, so we know there's definitely an issue. What is the issue is the question. Alright, so if we are not the server, we want to call the server function. Actually, I think I possibly know what it is. Else if get owner role, if it equals role, crap, how do you spell it? Equals role authority, then we want to lower our hunger. I think this is why. So because it's not necessarily less than authority, it could be. Actually, I don't really know how the comparisons with this would work, but there's, I think, like 4 different roles that you can compare against. Let's try it again. As long as it doesn't do that little glitchy reset, we should be fine. So just to test, I'm gonna run it here. Please don't reset. And it reset. So we're still having the issue. Are we seeing anything here? Received RPC. Yep. Oh. If I could do the Peter Griffin laugh right now, I would. Control Shift B. And watch the problem fix itself. Actually, if this doesn't actually fix, I'm gonna be kind of pissed. Host server, join. Close. Alright, move forwards. Ah, gee, would you look at that? Whoa, fixed it, damn it. So now just to make sure, let's go ahead and join it again with another client. And as you can see, he is right there. Same thing, wrong thing. That guy, and that guy. So yeah, everything seems to be working as it should. So to just do a quick test and make sure the server is in fact controlling it properly, I'll just close this one. I'm going to go ahead and try to cheat it a bit with Cheat Engine. Here's our process. Oh, do a 87. 86, wait for it to come down. 85. And 84. Alright, so this should be our, yep, this is our hunger here. Change it to 100, should flash up. And then it should go right back down when the server sets it. Yep. Alright, so the server is in fact controlling our hunger, just like it's supposed to. That means we can go ahead and uncomment out our health. We actually shouldn't eat this line anymore. Uncomment out our thirst, I mean, not our health. Why I keep saying health? I'm not sure. Alright. Check it one more time. We don't need to do the cheat engine check because we are, well, the thirst is being done the exact same way. Make sure it goes down just fine. Alright, except this time it's going down for double. So it's probably running on the client and the server. So the client's lowering it and the server itself is lowering it. So let's try to figure out why. And I partially feel like it's due to not having the authority check. So if this fixes that issue, so as you can see by the as the thirst was decrementing, it was going by pretty much values of 1 instead of half, which kind of makes you think that it's okay, it's running on the server and the client. So the server's kind of calling the function to run, lowering it halfway, and then the client's also doing the exact same thing. What, did I just break you or something? Open. There we go. And join with client. Don't crash. Yay. Alright. Nope, still doing the exact same thing. As you can see, it's kind of lowering twice itself. Let's go ahead and try to look again and try to figure out why. Alright, so calling. They're doing the same thing for lower hunger. It should. Because these are doing nothing but calling the functions to lower it. So hunger should go down to 99. Yep. Alright, so it's doing the exact same thing. Okay, so we're calling lower thirst. If we are not the server, call server lower thirst. Then it runs its validate check. We're automatically just returning true, so it doesn't matter. Then it runs our implementation. From here we check if we are the authority. If we are the authority, meaning we're on the server, we call lower hunger again, which in turn runs the lower hunger function. So it's going to check if we are the authority again. I mean, if we are less than the authority, that should be false. And it should simply run this part here to lower our hunger. But it's acting like we're the server and not the authority, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. I feel like what check we should do. Trying to think here. We might be able to prevent this from really running on the client altogether. So really nothing should happen to the lower hunger or thirst at all, except for on the server. And if that's the case, then we're going to have to end up rewriting the lower hunger and lower thirst a little bit later on. Okay, and now you can see they're going down correctly. So it's running on the, so for whatever reason, we just had to figure out why it is running on the client as well. It's probably something stupid that I overlooked. Granted, it's 2:13 in the morning. We're just going to leave this as it is for right now. And we will go through later on and fix up our lower hunger and our lower thirst functions. That way, if let's say we eat something, let's say we have a certain type of food in the future where we want to eat it and make it so it lowers our thirst. Well, if we do that, then we call our lower thirst function. As it stands, it would lower it for double the amount that you want it to lower it for. So right now, since we're probably not going to end up adding that kind of feature in this video, in this tutorial series, we don't need to fix it. But just to make everything nice, we're going to go ahead and fix it later on. Alright, so in the next video, we will either be fixing this or adding our little health setup. And we're going to make it so once our hunger or thirst, or both, get below 0, we will start losing health. So, I should probably end up just doing that all together in one video. Well, I will see you then.